And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Traveling up. Roger, planet.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Fighting downside FD off. Bring in FD off. It's orange! Orange 25!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage. Put that in the big bag, Eagle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
This methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. Keep red. We don't need any more of these.
Good morning, everyone. You are taking a look live at Spaceport America in New Mexico, where you see VSS Eve and Unity are ready to fly to the edge of space. I am Sawyer Rosenstein. I see all of your 5x5s in chat. I will be hosting today's launch activities. And of course, as always, I am not alone. I am joined in the studio by EJ. How's that going?
Hey, Sawyer. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. And I mean, I have some personal connections to this mission, so I'm super excited. And I'll talk more about that later. But also joined in studio by Trevor. How's it going?
Hey, Sawyer, I'm doing great. It feels like the week of the space plane, and that's an exciting thing to say.
Well, yes, as you were also taking a look at a different space plane that is set to visit the ISS. And then, of course, out in the field with all of these cameras, getting us the view here is the field himself, Jack.
I'm here just setting up cameras. Hi, everybody.
All right. And again, as always, you can tag us at NASA Spaceflight in chat. That appears in our special little software that we've got here so that we can answer any of your questions and comments as they come in. So, first things first, we have this mission known as Galactic 05. How about we get a quick little summary of what this mission actually is about? Trevor, what is the deal with Galactic 05?
Yeah, so this is the fairly typical, at this point, monthly Virgin Galactic flight. So this will take the 6 crew members on board the vehicle up to an altitude of a little over 80 kilometers. So to get there, what we expect to see is first of all the mothership, which you can see on your screen now, take off with the spacecraft attached to it. And that will climb up, do a few loops as it gains altitude and velocity, and then later that will be dropped from the mothership before ignition of its hybrid or its engine on board. And that engine will burn for, I believe, a few dozen seconds, and before taking the spacecraft to the aforementioned 80-kilometer altitude. Once it reaches apogee, there'll be some weightlessness, in which case they will conduct a bunch of experiments that we can get more into in a little bit, and then the spacecraft will descend from there. So it'll first be in the slightly weird feathered config, and then it will rotate its tail around for a normal landing on the runway.
Yeah, this is a very unique one. Again, the only other company that is currently launching private astronauts, which is on hold as the investigation continues for a previous incident, was Blue Origin, which launches rocket style, like vertical from the ground, as opposed to this instance where it's kind of like the space plane underneath VSS Unity. So you're talking a lot about those crazy flip maneuvers. EJ, I know you've done your fair share of crazy flip maneuvers in Kerbal, but how exactly does that all work for this flight?
Well, are we going to talk about the whole ascent or just the part where we're doing the feathering here? Because the mothership's going to take the spacecraft up to, I think it's 40,000 feet, and then it's going to let it go. And as Trevor said, the rocket engine is going to get it up in the air, and then it'll go on a nice, well, not ballistic arc. It'll go on an arc, and then it'll come back down. And when it comes back down, the entire tail of that plane actually rotates upwards 90 degrees. That's called the feather. And what it does is actually basically turns the whole spacecraft into a gigantic air brake. That's going to make sure it doesn't come down and experience too much compression heating on the way down. It basically makes the whole thing like a parachute on the way down. That's what they use to slow back down, because I mean, it turns out the further you go up, the further you're going to fall right back down, right? And the further you go up there, the more entry heating potentially you could have. It's Kerbal 101, guys, right? Like on the way down. So they put that feather. They have the feather on the spacecraft. It folds the whole thing. It folds like a taco almost, and then comes right back down. Also, tacos are good. Those are pretty neat.
Yes, it is raining tacos out of the sky. Tacos,
okay with
no
this.
need to ask why. Lego movie reference. Anyway, the other thing we have not yet discussed is who is actually on board this flight. So there will be 6 people total aboard VSS Unity, which is the part that's going to space, and then the mothership VSS Eve has its crew of 2 as well. So for Virgin Galactic, the people commanding the mission and piloting it are Mike Masucci and Kelly Latimer, who are veterans of previous Virgin Galactic flights. On board, you also will have the astronaut instructor Colin Bennett, and then 2 researchers, Dr. Alan Stern and Kelly Girardi, as well as a 6th unnamed private astronaut of Franco-Italian nationality, which is the only information provided about them by Virgin Galactic. And then on board the mothership, you will also have Jamil Janjua and Andy Edgell. So we've got quite the team out there, and I promise we will talk a lot more about the crew on board, especially the 2 researchers and some of the research that they'll be doing, as this is pretty major in terms of actually getting private research astronauts up into space. It's kind of almost like EJ, the payload specialist mode, sort of, in shuttle.
Yep. Yeah, actually, so we were talking a little bit before this cast. There is a shuttle payload on this, is there not?
Yeah, there is. And when I say a shuttle payload, we mean there is a legitimate actual piece of hardware that flew twice aboard Space Shuttle. So that's a really cool part. One of the images will be taking a look at the exact same star fields that were done on previous shuttle missions, and they will be testing the Virgin Galactic windows to see how they compare to the shuttle windows and how this spacecraft can be used for astronomy in the thinner parts of the atmosphere.
Now, I don't know if you guys know, we're kind of big space shuttle fans around here. Like, we kind of lay it on a little thick from time to time. I know, but we actually really, really like that thing. The thing's pretty cool.
Oh, we absolutely do. And of course, I'm going to be quizzing you on STS 85 and 93, the 2 missions that this flew on, so we'll see what you remember.
I'm going to
Oh,
Google,
boy.
dude. I'm not going to lie.
All right, fair enough. But yes, fun fact, the instrument originally called SWURI, SWURI, first looked at Comet Hale-Bopp in 97, then flew again studying fields in, I believe it was ultraviolet, in 1999, and there's those same ultraviolet studies that will be tested today by Dr. Stern.
That's really cool. Now, sorry, you said you actually know some of the crew flying on this today. Yeah?
Yes, in fact. So Dr. Alan Stern, we've had him recently on NSF Live, actually, but prior to that, I've met him multiple times at different science events, Northeast Astronomy Forum way back when. So he is a really nice guy. And then Kelly Girardi, I only found out a couple of months ago, is actually my neighbor.
What?
Yeah,
Really? Oh.
same town. So
All right.
I had been talking with her I haven't actually gotten to meet her in person yet, but I've been talking with her months ahead of time before she was even announced as the actual flyer for this mission. And we've been talking almost every day since, wishing her luck as she's been sharing her journey on social media. Because for those who don't know, Kelly is very active with about 1 million followers combined on her different platforms and is also a published author. So, yes, I have
Pretty
connection
awesome.
to 2 of the crew members here.
Now the real question is, when do you not?
I mean, you never know, but yeah. Uh, let's see. We have some support here that I want to address, even some before we went live, like Pauline Brock with the super chat saying, "Yes, you're covering this. Thank you. You're welcome." And of course, thank you for Jack making it all the way out there to almost middle of nowhere, New Mexico. For those who don't know, Spaceport America is kind of near the city of Truth or Consequences, which is probably the most major city in that area. Karen,
Yeah,
thank you for becoming.
do you have me? Can I cut in really quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
I might go robot, so if I do, stop me. But as people are supporting the stream, I just want to make sure that they know how thankful I specifically and everyone in NSF is for that support. It is not trivial to get me out here. I flew from Brownsville. I checked a giant checked bag that cost a bunch of money because I brought a robot so we would have multiple angles.
Plane
Like,
is moving,
it
by
is
the way.
not
Sorry
trivial
to
to do this.
interrupt.
You're good. It's not trivial to do this, so thank you everybody so much for the support. Okay, I'm operating my camera. I'll go away now. Bye.
Yes, as you can see, we've got VSS Eve, which is the mothership that is taxiing, it appears, out to the runway. And then you have the VSS Unity, which is the windows actually in the middle there, right, Trevor?
Yes, that is correct. So right in the, it kind of looks like there are 3 fuselages. So the one on the left and the right, that's the mothership, and then the one in the middle is the actual spacecraft that the 6 crew members that will go to space today are in. And you can see also right there are 2 tails, and then in between those 2 tails, there's like the bright blue and purple smaller tail, and that's the tail / feather of the spacecraft.
And there you go. And again, that feathering mechanism and all of that will remain locked until it is dropped from underneath the mothership, right?
Yeah, so it will be in this launch config up until after the motor is off, and then once the engine has turned off, then it enters this feather config for the first part of reentry, and then it goes back into the glide config.
And there we go. And it appears as if it is either lined up or holding short of the runway there at Spaceport America in New Mexico. There's a really good view there, kind of the side of the ship. Now, EJ, you've built crazy Kerbal things. The aerodynamics on this, how does something like this even fly, where you've got the 3 different fuselages, the wide wings, the dual stabilizers?
I mean, with a big enough wing, anything will get up in the air, and with enough airspeed, anything can fly. I mean, look at the shuttle. All right. No, so we got that big wing in the center. Oh, we're rolling. Here we go. There's the big wing in the center that connects the 2 fuselages. So twin fuselage aircraft are not anything new. That's been done going all the way back to, I mean, the oldest one that I can think of off the top of my head is like a P-38, right? So twin fuselage aircraft isn't anything new here, but in this particular case, the twin fuselage are needed so you have space for the ship, the spacecraft in the center. And we got a good shot right up the business end right there. That's excellent.
Yeah, unfortunately, they don't get to use that motor for a speed boost on the runway. This is just the 4 engines that you see mounted underneath the wings of the mothership there.
Now, actually, Trevor, do you know what engines the mothership has on it? What motors are those? Do you know?
No, I'm not a big enough aviation geek to know that.
Okay. Cool.
I will say though, however, while it obviously can fly, twin fuselage aircraft are very inefficient relative to a single body aircraft, and that's not just because you have more surface area at the front where air is hitting, but you also have this thing where on your wing, as you go across it, you want, right, zero lift on the edges, obviously, and then you want a nice, fairly parabolic amount of, or if you graph like above the wing, the amount of lift generated from each point, you want that to be fairly parabolic, with the zeros being at each end of the wingtip. So when you have these two fuselages, it interrupts that, which drastically reduces efficiency.
They're saying, basically, plain English way of saying that is that you want more lift to come from the center, not from the outsides of the wings, because that's going to create turbulent airflow out at the edge, right?
Yes, that is correct.
There you go.
So it looks like they taxied out and are doing a kind of 360 on the runway there, going into the wind direction. And it appears as if it'll be taking off pretty much directly at our camera there. Hopefully. As it finishes lining up there. This is an absolutely beautiful view, by the way.
Yeah.
And we'll get to see this thing power up, and fly off. And hopefully you'll be able to hear these beautiful engine sounds as well as they fly by. Again, now we are waiting for the official takeoff. The original planned takeoff time was 9 a.m. Mountain Time, which is where this currently is. And I do want to, right before they take off, give a huge shout out to Virgin Galactic themselves for allowing us this amazing access and for hosting NSF. So just want to make sure we thank them very much for this access. Now, when this takes off, this will be their 6th suborbital mission in only 6 months. And there we go. We'll let you listen to the engines as it takes off.
Go Galactic 05.
What a view.
Godspeed.
Good luck, Kelly, Alan, and everyone on board. Woo-wee, that was some great sound there too, and it's exciting. The mission is now officially underway for Galactic 05. I guess, in a way, we have liftoff as it lifts off the runway there, and the beauty is now we'd be able to use flight trackers to kind of follow the path of the two as they're currently mated, working their way up to their eventual drop altitude.
And by the way, EJ, I just did a quick Google of what engines are on the mothership, and apparently it is Pratt & Whitney PW308, if that means anything to you.
Yeah. That's so those those are smaller turbofans. That's something that you'd see on like a small private jet or like a small regional jet. So something like smaller than a 737 or an A320. Those are, I mean, they're not weak by any means, pulling that whole SRB, the hybrid SRB up in the air in the spacecraft. But yeah, that's a smaller turbofan, believe it or not.
Wow, and yet look at all it's carrying.
Yeah, it's not, SRBs are kind of heavy. Just saying.
Well, yeah, that is true. And that's the other thing that I think is important to mention. We're used to seeing a lot more of these liquid-fueled rockets that are either hydrolox, which is hydrogen and oxygen, or RP1 and liquid oxygen. We're starting to see the methalox with methane. This is just a single solid rocket motor, right, EJ?
Yeah, I think it's a hybrid though. It has it has nitrous. They have the red button from the race car movies, but it's not like they're gonna hit. They're like, oh, let's hit it, let's go faster. No, the SRB needs the nitrous injection. That's the oxidizer. You can squeeze a little bit more performance out of the engine with a hybrid like this. So we have nitrous oxide injection into a solid rocket booster or motor, I guess. It's it's got some go in it.
And the other really unique thing about it that I find fascinating is it doesn't move. It's not a steerable engine. It is, however, not a straight out looking engine. You kind of saw that during the takeoff there. It's actually angled in such a
Yep.
way that once it drops, the solid rocket motor fires and it goes upwards at that exact angle of the motor.
Yeah, the nozzle's actually cut. It's like if you were looking at a nozzle from the side and you kind of put a diagonal line in it, hopefully we can get some views here of that nozzle, but it's actually cut with the side that's facing towards the sky right now being a little bit asymmetric to the bottom of the nozzle. So what does that mean? What does that basically mean? What that motor is going to do when it fires, because the nozzle is kind of asymmetric and it's more open towards the sky, it's going to create a positive pitch moment. Basically, it brings the nose up to fly on the arc that the spacecraft flies on. That's my favorite part. It's really cool. They cut the nozzle asymmetrically to get more gas to come out of the top to get the nose up, which is pretty freaking cool.
It is. It's a really neat design there. So
Pretty trick.
I mean, yeah, props to the designers there out at Virgin Galactic for thinking of that idea. And honestly, it's one of those things where you have less things that can kind of go wrong when you don't have as many moving parts, or in this case, you literally don't have an engine that moves.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no, like, thrust vector control, right, is not something that every rocket needs to have. It's there if you need it. Like, it really depends on what you're doing. In this particular case, the control surfaces are already going to do what you need them to do, so the rocket just needs to give you a nice, slight positive pitch up moment so you can get the nose up in the air, and then the stabilizer controls are just there to make sure the thing doesn't go off in a direction that you don't want.
There you go. Now, I do want to continue the support that we were addressing earlier, because right as the plane started to take off there. Karen, thank you for becoming a Pad Rat member. RC Horseman, thank you for gifting 5 Red Team memberships. Austin, thank you for also gifting 5 Red Team memberships. And to Infinity and Beyond, thank you for gifting a Red Team membership. Peter Thompson saying, here's 6 good luck roasted marshmallows for our newest explorers to space. Yum? Thank you for that. Daniel with the super chat saying, thank you, Jack, and all NSF team for all your hard work and this great coverage. We're so glad to be able to provide it to you. And then we have Craig here saying, gentlemen, do you know if Virgin Galactic has any plans to get rid of Eve and make the ship self-propelled? I don't think that's part of the plan, Trevor, is it?
No, that would require just such a large redesign of the vehicle to have it fly from runway all the way to their 85-kilometer target and then glide back down. It's quite advantageous, and due to it being suborbital, to have the altitude and velocity from the spaceship being dropped.
And like we were just talking about, you've got that lighter part where you can just have a single solid rocket motor engine and not have to worry about getting the height, the altitude. And I mean, we've had plenty of planes that have dropped spacecraft from underneath it. It's pretty well proven and tested. I may not ever fly underneath a 1011 TriStar, unfortunately, like past launches, but you take what you can get.
Shout out to the TriStar.
Yeah, those launches it's a beautiful plane. Those launches were cool. But then again, so is VSS Eve here too.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take some questions here. Again, reminder, you could tag us at NASA Spaceflight if you have any questions. D.A. Swanson asking, is the altitude destination / parameter for these flights always the same, or does it change based on the mission? EJ?
I have that data
Or sorry,
up in
Trevor,
front
go
of
ahead.
me.
I
Yeah,
apologize.
Dude,
I was
tee it
Googling
up,
this
Trevor.
earlier. So Galactic 04 was 87.4 kilometers, Galactic 03 was 88.6, 02 88.5, 01 85.1, Unity 25 87.2, Unity 22 86, and Unity 21 was 89.2, and then the two test flights went up to 89.9 and 82.72 respective. So it's roughly the same, but there is a little bit of variance in it.
Well, let's narrow it out here for a second. Now, Trev, do you think that the ones that flew to a lower apogee are ones that had more people on board, more mass, right?
Um, I mean, the mass of a few humans is so insignificant relative to the mass of the entire aircraft that I doubt it. Um, my guess is the lowest one was the first flight that went to 82.72 kilometers. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were a little bit more laid back and had higher margins than they do on operational missions, but that's pure speculation.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they're also carrying experiments on here too. I mean, this experiments might be a small, inconsequential dry mass as well, but I mean, it also could be motor performance too. I mean, getting the right amount of nitrous in there.
Yeah, that would be my guess is, slightly different efficiencies or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I mean, because if the nitrous flow rate is higher, you're going to get less impulse, right? But you're going to get more thrust. So they might tweak. Maybe they tweak it depending on the mission. But I mean, those apogee numbers seem to be super freaking close to each other. So it might just be to like take into account just slight differential performance. It's like when Falcon Heavy boosters come back down and land, right? Like they seem to stagger a little bit. That's not intentional. It's just differential performance. Just slight changes in thrust from rocket engine to rocket engine.
yeah. No, the Falcon Heavy case is actually really interesting because
Mm-hmm.
I think around the first Falcon Heavy flight, they actually wanted to increase the delay between the two boosters because they were worried about the
Yep.
GPS and altimeters kind of interfering with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And then later they realized, oh, we don't actually have to worry about this because just slight differences in engine performance, like you were saying, lead
Mm-hmm.
to them coming in about 15 seconds apart.
Yep.
I think you mentioned a little bit about the research on board this. I think now might be a good time to kind of just briefly talk about some of the research that is being done on this flight, if you don't mind. We'll start with the experiments that Kelly Girardi is doing. She is flying on behalf of IIAS and is doing some of these experiments in cooperation with the National Research Council of Canada. The first main thing that she'll be doing is a study about fluids in a low gravity environment, more particular, confined fluids. So the main basis kind of behind this, of understanding this, goes back. You may remember there was a spacewalk, I think it was back in 2013, where Italian astronaut Luca Parmitano was outside the International Space Station and his helmet started filling up with fluid. And
Not
he
good.
came very close to drowning in space, ironically, which he did not. He was okay. Thankfully, they were able to get him back in safely. But this is leading to a whole idea of what do you get when you have fluid in such a confined environment in low gravity. So that will be one of the data that will be collected, where the container with liquid in it, see how it settles, see how difficult it becomes to dislodge once you get into that microgravity environment. She'll also be wearing something called Astro Skin, which I absolutely love the name of that, which is basically a biomonitoring device. And then the third one is a continuous blood glucose monitor. It's one of the first times that this is being tested in a microgravity spaceflight environment. So basically, a couple days ago, she had a glucose monitor implanted in her arm, attached to her arm, that is doing continuous monitoring and will continue to do so now all the way through the spaceflight, so you can compare the baseline and the result that you get here. And this is a result of the fact that there is evidence that long-duration spaceflight might actually induce insulin resistance. So that is the study of her. And while we have her up, why don't we talk about Kelly's bio, too? As mentioned, she's flying with the International Institute for Astronautical Sciences, an aerospace technology professional, and as mentioned, a science communicator with nearly 1 million followers across her platforms. She is also a published author of a book, Not Necessarily Rocket Science, and a picture book series called Luna Muna, which was actually read by Peggy Whitson aboard the International Space Station this year. Currently, she's the lead missions operations for Palantir Technologies and serves on the Defense Council for the Truman National Security Project, in addition to being a former board member of the Explorers Club. And one of my favorite facts, besides, actually having her be a neighbor of mine, is she does have a young daughter, and her name is, you know what her name is?
No.
Her name is Delta.
Oh,
Her middle
excellent.
initial is V. So her daughter's name is Delta V.
No, don't hate that.
And in case you're wondering if that is a coincidence, no, it is not. That is her she named her daughter after Delta V, as in the Force there.
That's excellent. That seems like she's done a lot. Well, you know what, guys? I made my bed today, so there's that. I mean, that might be comparable. It's just, no, she seems super accomplished. That's really cool. It's really cool to go out, so are some of the people that you meet in this industry, you're just like, wow, that resume is awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll be over here. All right, see ya.
As epic. And it's not just her. Reminder, there's another researcher on board this flight as well, with Dr. Alan Stern, who is astronaut 020 is his number for this one. He is flying with the Southwest Research Institute. You may know him as the principal investigator for the New Horizons mission. Is currently also the vice president for the Southwest Research Institute and is a member of the National Science Board. And you were talking about not really feeling accomplished. He was named Time 100 Most Influential People twice, in 2007 and in 2016. So, no biggie. And then he was the former NASA Associate Administrator. Was also the former board member of the Commercial Spaceflight Federation, the Challenger Centers for Spaceflight Education, and Kinetics Corps. So, not too shabby, if I do say so myself.
Yep. I made and I did the dishes last night. So, adulting.
Yes.
Okay.
And as mentioned, he will also be doing the biomedical research and will be studying with the instrument that flew on shuttle. So let me let him talk a lot about what that mission was with the space shuttle flight that's now flying on Virgin.
Doing astronomy, and if it pans out, then there should be a lot of applications for Virgin to go sell flights, not just to U.S. researchers.
We'll make sure we get the sound hopefully up on that.
These are applications,
and that way you'll be able to hear.
Using robotic suborbital vehicles all the way back to the 1950s to do this kind of stuff. If we can now do it not once a year, but once a week, and if we can do it for 10 times less price per flight, that's a game changer.
When you do these observations, are you going to be just looking out the window? Like you're going to be shooting the observation through the window that's already on the spacecraft, or is there a special window they're installing for this?
No, we're using the windows that are there.
Okay.
And we're actually taking a space shuttle experiment I was principal investigator for and looking at the same star fields with the same instrument. The only difference is instead of a space shuttle window and space shuttle attitude disturbances, it's a Virgin window and Virgin attitude. And we're going to see if Virgin can do better or the same or not as well. And little things matter in this. So you could calculate a lot of that. You could simulate it in a computer in a sort of perfect world environment. But what we can't quantify are the things like the glints off the wings affecting the experiment, or the microscopic scratches and films that come from the propulsive ascent that you don't have. They're different every flight.
Yep.
And so the only way to really find out is to go do the experiment. Bring the equipment, look through the window at the same star fields that we did with the shuttle, with the same instrument, and compare.
Is it the same type of instrument, or is this an actual physical instrument that also flew on a space shuttle?
This
For my
is
curiosity.
this is a literally 25-year-old instrument that works perfectly. That was
Yeah.
high tech in the end of the 90s and early 2000s. That has been in controlled environmental storage all this time. We're using the same gear, the same atoms, right? On Virgin that we flew on the shuttle a number of times.
So yes, this is actual
awesome.
shuttle hardware that is flying on, and that was the instrument when it was aboard the shuttles, and now it is aboard that vehicle that you see on your screen right there, as VSS Unity is currently mounted underneath the mothership VSS Eve.
Yep. Let's see. Current altitude's 37,900 feet, traveling at 275. Right
I
now,
believe-
circling around.
Yeah, they're on their they're about to begin their third circle, if I remember correctly. And generally, we see 4 to 5, so we're getting to drop.
Exactly. And a reminder, we have that full NSF Live interview with Dr. Stern from just a few weeks ago available on YouTube to watch back after the flight. So you can see him talking about his excitement before and the fact that he did specifically say that he's looking forward to shaking our hands after he lands. So hopefully Jack will be able to make that happen. And now, EJ, for the shuttle geek and nerds inside of us,
Shuttle?
that you saw the picture at the end there from STS-93, which is a very special mission in that it launched the Chandra X-ray Observatory
Yeah,
and
baby.
was also the first shuttle mission commanded by a woman with Eileen Collins.
Yep.
So talk about how far spaceflight has come from launching Chandra and finally having the first female commander to now you've got Dr. Stern and Kelly Girardi flying on this commercial research flight. I think that's just really cool to see how things have evolved.
It's wild, man. It's, I mean, we were going, even during that STS-93, seeing Eileen Collins fly the space shuttle around is fantastic, and then Pam Melroy after that, it's impressive, but you gotta remember at the time, like, that was a big deal, but the shuttle was only flying, like, I don't know, once, twice, 3 times a year at that point. I mean, compare that, and then maybe you got like an Atlas or a Delta II launch every once in a while. You compare that to now, where rockets are launching pretty much on the daily, right? And we have pretty much routine suborbital tourist flights here coming from Virgin Galactic. It's mind-blowing as a space fan, because, I mean, so are you. You were around then. I was around then. Chris B, you're out there somewhere on the internet. You were around then. Like, going from then to now is like night and day. And it makes me really, really happy to see all this space flight. I'm greedy. I like all rockets. I want more. Give it more, more.
Yes, always more. And it's just so cool to see how we've evolved. And again, as mentioned, this is Virgin's 6th suborbital flight in 6 months. So they are really starting to pick up the pace on these flights here.
It's excellent. It looks like they did it, they did a couple of test flights, they got the data that they needed, and then they made the push to doing this routine every month. Even that in itself is super impressive. And they're reusing vehicles. Like, you gotta change the engine out on the mothership because it's a solid rocket booster, but you're reusing vehicles here. Like, can you imagine if something like this had existed, 20 years ago? It would have blown our freaking minds. We would have been like, wait a minute, they're doing that every month? Even that in itself is pretty dang impressive. But, we see rockets, people flying up to the ISS, just people being launched into space kind of on the regular here. And I am very happy to see that be routine. I want that to be boring. I don't know about you guys.
Well, we are now passing 40,000 feet with the 2 craft still mated together at this point. As a reminder, it will drop away and then fire up its engine, right, Trevor, when it comes time for the actual flight?
Yes, that is correct. I can pull up the timeline, if you give me just a second, if you want to talk about something else, I can give you more detail on exactly how that'll be.
Sure. Well, you pull that up. I do want to mention that Virgin is partnering with NASA on a lot of these, and that's why this private research mission is actually super important and super significant. There is something with NASA called the NASA Flight Opportunities Program, which is basically a way to try and provide access to the microgravity environment to as many researchers and people as possible by finding newer ways, ways that are more accessible, that are cheaper. So they've obviously worked on other payloads, other suborbital, like sounding rockets, like we were kind of showing in the video there. And now they've been working with Virgin in particular to have certain things on this flight. They've had demonstrations previously on other Virgin missions that were uncrewed, that were kind of just there doing things in autonomously in that microgravity environment. And now we have actual researchers up there doing these experiments in a spaceflight environment.
It's wild, man. I'm just happy to be a part of it in some way, shape, or form. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I have this info up now. Sorry, I just wanted to double check the burn length to make sure we were saying that correctly.
My God.
Sorry. We're at 41,500 feet or so, and the carrier aircraft will take VMS Eve up to approximately 50,000 feet. Some previous flights have been a little bit lower than that, so we'll have to see exactly what altitude they drop at. Then from there, they will release the spacecraft, where it will then ignite its motor for approximately 42 seconds, and this will take the spacecraft to approximately Mach 3. I will insert a small little rant here that I really dislike when companies give us velocity in Mach, because a lot of them don't correctly incorporate that the altitude or that the density of the air is decreasing, so therefore your Mach number should actually go up, but that's a conversation for a different day.
Wait, are you mocking them then for using that?
Oh, boo.
Sorry, continue.
Then during this period, they will feel weightlessness. They'll be in that inertial frame that Einstein loved thinking about. And then during that time, the spacecraft will enter the feather mode that we talked about previously. And that's when the tail booms rotate in preparation for reentry. And as EJ was noting earlier, that's because they want to increase the surface area of the vehicle. So they basically just want a massive parachute that's made of metal and not actually a parachute to help slow it down quickly without generating too much heat. Then it will hit apogee, which, as we noted earlier, will probably be somewhere in the 86 to 88 kilometer range, but it varies a little bit for every flight, before starting reentry, which will happen in that feathered config. And then it will exit that feathered config and glide back to the runway for landing.
There you go.
Trev, talk nerd to me here for a second. When, I was talking about the feather and how it's exposing the whole bottom of the wing. It's basically turning the delta wing of the spacecraft perpendicular to laminar flow. That's increasing coefficient of drag, right?
Yes, that is correct.
So if you have an increased coefficient of drag, more surface area is being exposed to oncoming flow, you're going to make more drag. Kind of funny how that works.
Yeah, I think it's even more of a win than that, though, because not only do you have more surface area, which leads to more drag, but as you said, your coefficient also goes up. So your drag per unit area goes up, and your unit area goes up.
Yeah, laminar flow. I'm sure that's English. We've now passed over 42,000 feet on its climb up here prior to drop. I do want to thank some other people who've been supporting us really quickly here. Thank you, Sideshow Bob, for gifting a Red Team membership. Boxer Stevie saying, been watching you guys since SN8. Really enjoy your coverage of rocket launches and everything happening in Starbase. Keep up the amazing coverage. Well, thank you. Shadow Gunner saying, go Virgin Galactic. Thank you for the great coverage as always, NSF. Glad we can bring you the coverage. And Ixie, thank you for becoming a Capcom member. Reminder, Capcom and above gets access to our NSF Discord.
Oh man, the Discord. Fun times in there.
Here's an interesting question, kind of going to what we were talking about. Because reminder, it is a solid rocket motor on the back of this that does not gimbal. It is a fixed solid rocket motor that will propel VSS Unity to the edge of space here. They're asking why use an SRB instead of a liquid-fueled engine? Wouldn't liquid be easier to refurbish and be more efficient even using hypergalls?
That's a super good question. Trev, you want this or should I take it?
I think you should take it, EJ.
All right, cool. So, all right, guys. Yeah, the SRB, you have to basically take it out. It's basically spent every time. I mean, now you can reuse the nitrous injection systems on that SRB, but you got to pull the whole engine out. The reason why they opted for that type of design is even though like a liquid fuel engine could be refurbishable, like reusable, the SRB is simpler. And sometimes that's the name of the game with aerospace engineering. You opt for a less complicated design so you can fly more. I know that sounds a little weird, right? Considering we see like Falcon 9s fly pretty much on the daily, and they're reusing that. Well, you got to remember this is a lot less complicated system than a Falcon 9 first stage. I mean, if we're comparing like spacecraft to stage, which I suppose is not the best comparison, right? But sometimes the name of the game is simplicity here. They don't need a liquid fuel engine. That's a lot of extra moving parts on something that's already flying to a place where not a lot of things fly, period. So sometimes even though you're opting for a non-reusable motor or even a refurbishable motor, sometimes keeping it simple is the way to achieve high rates of flight.
Keep it simple, stupid is a saying for a reason.
Yep. It's always
Now-
trade-offs. That's engineering in a nutshell, man. Always trade-offs.
That's true. And again, you've got things that are proven and reliable, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
That's right.
Hey, can you hear me?
Robotically, we can kind of hear you.
You should have my camera here shortly. They are flying north. They will turn south, and that's when we expect the drop.
Yeah, this
All
is
right.
about lap 4 at this point, so typically, as you mentioned, it is as they're going southward that they do the drop on this, so hopefully that will be coming up very soon.
Okay, yeah. Current altitude is 44,350 at 284 knots. They should be circling here in a second, as Jack said.
Yeah, and again, keep in mind, this is just a regular plane, so a lot of this is coming from a required instrument on board called ADSB. That's how you can get the data for both VSS Unity and Eve. So the mothership and the spacecraft actually both have tracking data on them, and that's how you're able to see this. And it is kind of funny to try, if you go back and watch the data from VSS Unity, once it ignites its engine, the data gets very confused, to say the least.
And not only do we have the track on those two, right, but the chase plane, November 48 Victor Golf, is circling around Spaceport America right now. It's also up in the air. It's about 10,000 feet up.
So yeah, the airspace is kept very clear, even though it appears to be kind of busy. Because it's kind of near some major airports, at least in the New Mexico area, and a lot of flight paths that fly to southeastern locations in the U.S.
Yep, not only that, but you have a kind of permanent TFR just to the east of this with White Sands, which is where the shuttle landed once. What?
STS-3.
Yeah, baby.
Let's see here. We are now getting really close to that drop point, so what will happen likely next is it will start turning. It will kind of go along that mountain range area on the right side of your screen there, and that is about where we should see the drop on this particular vehicle. This is getting exciting. I don't know about you guys. Again, the fact that I have the connection to two of these people on board, it's a little bit different than normal flights. Normally it's, okay, yeah, there's people on board, but when it's people that you know, it's a lot more nerve-wracking, I gotta say.
Are you nervous?
No, I mean, I trust them. They've done all of their research, and they've been, studying for a while. They've known about this for a while. They've been preparing their experiments. They've all done microgravity training, extra gravity training. They're ready. And
yeah, absolutely.
as mentioned, this is the 6th flight in 6 months, so Virgin Galactic continuing to prove their vehicle. So, but it's even still, you always get that excitement, that little jitters before any crew launch, and in this
Absolutely.
particular case, even more so, at least for me. Let's see.
That's understandable. Absolutely.
Yeah. Andy asking, is Virgin Galactic the only company doing these drop flights, or are any other companies planning to compete? In terms of crew, I believe this is the only one, right, Trevor?
Yeah, and with cargo, we had, right, Virgin Orbit, but unfortunately they went bankrupt, probably about 6 months ago at this point.
Yep.
And their rockets and carrier ship and all of that were auctioned off. So, yeah, sadly, this is pretty much the only one right now, because Stratolaunch is doing some hypersonic drop testing, but we haven't seen them actually do anything yet, so we'll see.
Yeah, Stratolaunch is gonna do it. Do we know if TriStar and Pegasus do anything anymore?
Very rarely do they. The Pegasus is another underwing mounted launch vehicle, for those unaware, which does launch underneath the L-1011 TriStar, one of the few remaining of those aircraft flying.
I think that's the only TriStar that's still airworthy.
Yeah. We'll have to see. Yeah, apparently it is the only one remaining I'm seeing in the back channel, but yeah.
Yep.
So it's not as common anymore, the underplane drop and launch. So Virgin Galactic at this point pretty much has the market on that.
I mean, with Stratolaunching, I'm gonna try to get this in here before they circle around for the next drop here, or for the next for the drop, right? The thing about Stratolaunching is that Stratolaunching, it really only works when you have something small. At least if you're Stratolaunching to orbit, right? The reason why Stratolaunching makes sense economically is because the launch pad is already there. You already have a plane that can fly all the way up to 40, 50,000 feet, right? But here's the thing: they're really only good for launching small sats because there's no bigger planes to launch bigger things. I mean, even look at something like Stratolauncher. Stratolauncher is gigantic, and that's about as big as you're going to get for an airplane that can take off of the runways that we have in terms of weight and runway length, right? If you wanted to launch something like Stratolaunch, something that can move 10 tons up into space, you're going to need an infinitely bigger plane. And at that point, right, now you have to make a launch pad. Now you have to make a launch pad that flies. That's I mean, your launch pad is basically stage 0, as some rocket engineers eloquently put it. So the thing about Stratolaunching is that it makes sense if you're moving small stuff into space, but once you try to move something big, or even like a crew flight to orbit, like this is just a crew flight that's suborbital, right? If you're moving something crewed to orbit, that you're going to need a way bigger plane, and that plane doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's on a whole different plane, that plane.
Oh my gosh.
Well, the vehicle is turning now, as you could see from the flight data. It is now turning east. It will then turn south, and that is when we expect the vehicle to drop. We have Zap Fan asking, who are the 2 other people besides the pilots? In fact, I think it's still worth mentioning the pilots. I will reiterate who is on board this particular mission. So you have the 2 pilots, basically. The commander and the pilot are Mike Masucci and Kelly Latimer. There's also the Virgin Galactic astronaut instructor Colin Bennett. Then you have Dr. Alan Stern, who will be doing his research, along with Kelly Girardi. That is followed by a 6th unnamed person, a private astronaut of Franco-Italian nationality. And that's in addition to the 2 pilots that are aboard the mothership VMS Eve of Jamil Jandra and Andy Edgell. So, for those wondering, that is who is on board this. And Virgin does say that in the future, because the last couple of flights they've had either one of their cabin experience people or astronaut trainers fly along with them in the cabin. This is one of the last flights, according to Virgin, that they'll be doing that. And in the future, it will be for I don't know the nice way to put it. I guess for customers on board, either those that are paying or those that are researchers. I think that's a good way to put it, right?
Yeah, sounds good to me, man.
Cool. And I did see someone ask if there is a chase plane, and I believe we've seen one, right, EJ?
Yeah, circling around Spaceport America, we have November 48 Victor Golf. It's a 2023 Game Composites Game Bird is what it says. It's a GB1. It's like basically it's a stunt plane that they're flying chase here. That will meet up with the spacecraft once it comes back down from space and fly what's called chase with it. It'll basically fly in formation with it to get a good view of the spacecraft coming in. The imaging like that goes back, that goes all the way back to the space shuttle. Even during the approach and landing tests with the space shuttle back in the late 70s, they had planes flying chase to just watch that thing to, make sure nothing weird happens on the way down. And if something weird does happen, they'll be able to report it, because it's not like the pilots on board can see the landing gear on the spacecraft, right? They don't have a third person view. I mean, that'd be cool, but the chase plane is there to basically fly, get a third person view of the vehicle when it's coming down to land.
Right, and it also does make for some cool video afterwards, too.
Oh, yeah, I mean, there is that, absolutely.
And now we can see that the plane is making its turn south.
We believe that this is expected to be for the drop, right?
Yeah, and I think it's not unheard of that sometimes they'll do another on some of the previous flights, where if they see something, if they just want a little bit more time, they can just loop around again. But yes, this is expected to be the drop.
And they have quite a TFR here for a while, so it's not like they're worried about, oh, we have to launch at an exact time to hit an exact target, right?
Yeah, they have a pretty large TFR.
So
There's
that's all
obviously a launch window that they have to launch within, but it's not like it's a to the second T0 or anything like that.
And along those lines, Tommy Richards is asking, I don't know if we know the exact answer to this, but how long do they fly in miles? And then I guess a follow-up would be just how long is the actual flight itself?
Rev, you had the apogee of those flights. They were in kilometers though, but we can do a quick conversion.
Yeah, let's see, about 55 miles or so vertical. And then how long is the flight?
15.
I think
it's like 15 minutes. Yeah, it
yeah,
can't be more than that.
Yeah, from drop to landing, I believe, is on the order of 15 minutes.
Right, and then the actual part where they experience the weightlessness and are able to unstrap their seats and move about the cabin and perform their experiments is, I believe, in the order of 3 to
Can you hear me?
5 minutes. Yes, we
Jack?
hear you, Jack.
We're working on getting my camera up, but they are turned south. There, I can see the contrails. And one thing, if we do get my feet up, to look out for is just before drop. There's like a surge. I don't really know how else to describe it from the engines. Like the contrails change. So if we get this feed going, then keep your eye out for that change of the engines and the contrail, and then that's like happens right before drop. But they are coming right for me, so I'm gonna shut up and try and get this camera working.
That's fine. And there's also a very dramatic maneuver, I believe, that the vehicles do to get that extra bit of separation. Is that a thing, EJ?
Well, obviously when they go to drop the thing, the mothership is going to be a lot less mass, so it's gonna definitely want to go up a little bit because you just dropped the gigantic spacecraft off the bottom. But I do believe they start pitching the spacecraft up before release, or pitching the mothership up before spacecraft released, just a little bit.
Right. Just get that little bit of extra separation. And a
Yep.
reminder then, VMS Eve will kind of stay circling around in the air, let VSS Unity come in to land first, since they kind of can't really go around.
Yep.
Have that towed off the runway, and then they'll come in for the mothership landing after.
Yep, you can't always go around in that case.
That is true. That and another vehicle that we've
Shuttle.
mentioned too many. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that's why I like commentating with you, man.
Always worth mentioning that. Yep. You can see there in the distance, we have the two vehicles still currently connected at this point. We will keep an eye out for when they drop the suborbital vehicle and send the 6 people that are on board into the edge of space here.
Yeah, right now the vehicle's 44,375 feet up, traveling at 334 knots. So it's increased its speed a little bit.
And I believe they drop around 45 to 50,000 feet. So we're kind of in that range. And as mentioned, they did turn southwards, and it's typically on this southern portion of the loop that they perform the drop. Although we have seen in the past where they go south, and then either for some reason something doesn't look right, or they need to gain a little more altitude, whatever it may be, they do an additional lap just in case. So it's very possible that we see the drop here. It's also possible that it does another loop before that drop. So we're going to keep our eyes on the vehicle at this point and just hope we could see a drop here soon. And a reminder for those just tuning in, this is the Virgin Galactic 05 mission, which is a research flight with Dr. Alan Stern and Kelly Girardi performing research on board, in addition to a third private astronaut and a crew trainer that are all on board, set to fly to the edge of space aboard the VSS Unity, which is currently mounted underneath that mothership plane there, known as VMS Eve.
I'm actually not
Okay.
sure that I knew this. I just saw on the Wikipedia page that it was Stephen Hawking who chose the name for VSS Unity,
Oh,
which I think
fantastic.
is really cool.
Not to interrupt, dudes, but we're seeing a high climb rate here
Oh,
from the
There we
mothership.
go. We have drop.
Here it goes.
And that looks like the engine
Separation.
firing. Yep.
Yep, engine is on. Look at that.
And there it goes. That thing is speeding away super fast at this point.
Fly, baby, fly.
Godspeed to the crew. Alan, Kelly, have some fun up there. Oh yeah, and do research.
Yeah, that part. That too.
Oh, this is absolutely exciting. So again, this is the main powered portion of the flight. So Trevor, what's happening?
yeah, so right now the spacecraft is in its roughly 42-second long burn, which will take it up to an apogee of approximately 88 kilometers and a speed of roughly Mach 3, as they would say. And it looks like that is shut down.
Yep, there's engine cutoff.
As expected.
Yeah, so now it will just coast up to its apogee, and soon we can expect it to start entering the feathered configuration that we have been talking about.
It's a great
Yes.
track here.
So it will kind of move the entire spacecraft essentially around the wings, or vice versa.
Yeah, it is correct. I just want to shout out, I believe that tracking was done by Gage, so Gage is in the background. Thank you, Gage.
Yep, and at this point, I believe they will be starting to experience their weightlessness and be able to unstrap from their seats and start performing their experiments. Which, again, for those unaware, some of those experiments that they are conducting are biomonitors that they've been wearing. There is an active glucose monitor that Kelly Girardi has been wearing for a couple of days to compare now after the spaceflight. There is also imagery with a sort of UV camera that Dr. Stern will be testing out there as well to see how it compares to experiments that were flown aboard the space shuttle. And all of this in the 3 to 5 minute span that they have up there currently flying in that weightless spaceflight environment. This is unbelievable. And again, you're looking from the ground here at a vehicle that is currently at the edge of space right now. That still blows my mind there too.
It's Pretty impressive. With all the orbital flights, we tend to not put a lot of thought into these suborbital flights, but it still is one heck of a flight regime here. There's not a lot of things that can do what that thing is doing.
Exactly. And you can actually kind of see the reflection there. It's almost as if that feathering is ongoing and you're kind of seeing the glint off of the sun. I can't confirm that, but it definitely looks like the glint indicates that everything has gone well so far with the feathering and that they will start coming back to land once again at Spaceport America in New Mexico. The other interesting thing to keep in mind is that this vehicle is quite light, which can mean a little bit of wobble on its way back down. As we've seen on past missions, the spacecraft may shake a little bit, but is totally expected on its way back down to Earth from space. And the barometric altitude is currently 0, because there's not really any atmospheric pressure to measure.
Yeah, on the flight tracker, it just it says 62,000 feet, and then that's it. And it's just like, I don't really know what to do with this.
Yeah. And again, there is not really an atmosphere to measure up there, so there's kind of that too. So, at this point now, Trevor, where should we be about in the flight?
Yeah, so I believe at this point we are likely still in the weightlessness phase, coming up on the end of that. So this is when the reentry will start. And so they'll come in in the feathered config, which is like the big wing up vertical, to slow down a little bit, and then they will enter the glide. So it's kind of hard exactly to know exactly where we are, whether it's in glide or reentry yet, but hopefully we'll get some visual clues sooner than later to understand that.
Exactly. So we are keeping an eye on that. We're also keeping an eye from Virgin Galactic to see if they have any additional updates, other than confirming that they are on board and flying here.
Yeah, and it's worth reiterating, there are no onboard views provided for this flight, unfortunately.
But we thankfully have our cameras out there. We have this live view, which Gage is tracking it. And I know Jack is out there as well. I'm sure we'll be able to get his footage after the flight too here.
Looks like we're getting baro altitude coming back.
Yeah, it appears that it is on its way back down now. So far, so good. This is exactly what we expect from this. And again, its next stop after this is right back on the exact same runway that it took off from, except this time instead of being mounted underneath the VSS or VMS Eve, it will now be under its own power coming back down. And look at that view. You can see the feathers there, those two little pointy things up. That's the feathered portion of the wing.
Yeah, and it looks like we are now in the normal position again, where we're gliding.
Yes, now around 35,000 feet is the reading that we are getting from the ADSB information on board. Look at that. On board there, you've got 3 new space flyers. Dr. Alan Stern, Carrie Girardi, and a third unnamed astronaut 022. So this is exciting. And what exactly is kind of like the landing profile for this? It's not going straight in, right?
I mean, it circles around. I mean, this thing, it's not like the shuttle that it's going to fall out of the sky, right? This thing flies much more like an aircraft than it would, a brick with some wings attached to it. So they will circle around and land. It's definitely not the descent trajectory that's kind of in line with a shuttle coming down at like Mach 25.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it's they'll circle around for the runway. They'll do a heading alignment on the runway and basically just glide the thing right in. You know, altitude is the best insurance, right? So use the altitude to get yourself aligned and then drop that thing right down. But once again, the landing would be more like an aircraft, less like the shuttle.
Right.
Yeah, I
and if
mean,
I
it's
recall,
just like aircraft. It's all energy management. So
Yep.
when they're coming in, they have plenty of energy. So they do end up circling around the spaceport a couple times to burn some of that off and then line up for the runway. But I mean, it's quite a vehicle. Suffice to say, when Doss and I checked out the simulator, I think that was back for Galactic 01. Maybe I'll just save. You guys will have to see that footage when we publish it. But there is a lot of excess energy that they do not use. They just burn off. But if they did use it, oh boy, I'll just say that.
that's a good way to put it. And the runway there, like you said, altitude's your best friend here. You also have an extra long runway, which helps. The runway is about 12,000 feet in length, which is about 3,700 meters or so in length. So you've got that extra distance to help as well. So, Jack, while we have you here, I know you were dealing with some slight technical issues, but what'd that drop look like to you?
I'm just still thinking because you said going the distance, so now I have cake stuck in my head. They're going the distance. They're going the speed. It was great. A beautiful day for a drop. Absolutely no clouds. I wish my feed had been live, but is what it is. Sometimes you have little technical bugbears pop up. But I do have the footage, and I will be posting that. So do not fret. But holy cow! You know, like you said, Sawyer, we have what would you say? 3 more or 2 more space flyers? Like
3 more space
a good
flyers.
day.
Yep.
A good day to go to space. That's what I'll say. It's a fantastic day to go to space. And a few moments ago, I heard the sonic booms. So any day you see a rocket fly into space, good day. Any day you see people fly into space, even better day. And any day you get both of those plus sonic booms, I mean, what more do you
Hat-trick.
want?
Doesn't get
A
much
hat
better than
trick.
that.
Yep.
I do want to point out we do have our first image from Virgin Galactic, basically saying that the vehicle had released, everything went successful with the ignition. So confirmation from them that so far everything right on track, right on the money. And as mentioned, it will now be sort of doing its final loop around back here to make its way back to Spaceport America. EJ, what's going through your mind right now here? Because I know I'm jittery with excitement still.
I'm watching the track. I tend to nerd out with this stuff. I'm watching the track. I'm watching the altitude on the tracker that you guys see on the screen there. Looking at the barometric altitude, which it's altitude correlated from pressure, from barometric pressure. It's about 15,000, and I mean, obviously it's coming back down because it doesn't have propulsion on it. The propulsion was spent already. So I'm just sitting here watching. It looks like the chase plane met up with the vehicle, met up with the spacecraft there, and they'll basically be flying in formation all the way down. Not landing with it, though.
No, flying right along the side of the runway, though, typically.
Yep.
So that is making that turn there. Trevor, what about you?
Like you guys said, it's always an awesome day when we see these happen, whether it's people on New Shepard or Virgin Galactic or people go into orbit. It's always a cool feeling.
That is true. So far, so good. Looks like it's about 11,000 feet in altitude. And again, that's the barometric altitude, which is related to air pressure. So that's why it was kind of 0 when it was in space with the whole lack of barometric pressure. And you can see the ground speed there is about 200 knots. And already now down to about 10,000 feet. So at this point on board, it's basically going to feel like a normal airplane flight, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, like an A320 or a 737 when they're on approach, when you're descending down, the engines are on obviously, but you're just using gravity pushing down on the plane to stay flying, right? Like the gravity pushing down on the plane with a forward velocity is going to generate lift, and you know the lower you are, the closer you are to the ground, the less potential energy, more kinetic energy, right? Like you can basically just use that to keep going all the way back to the runway. I mean, you can't stay up there forever, but I mean that would be nice.
I know this is something that the FAA is working on, where right now when you're descending from like a flight level, let's just say like 40,000 feet or whatever, to the runway, you kind of go in stages where you may be lowered to like, 18,000 feet and then slowly lowered in steps until you're on the glide slope. And they're working on giving people approval to go straight from their cruise altitude at 40,000 feet or whatever, and glide slope from there for a continuous descent onto the runway, because that would make some flights quite a bit more efficient, since you don't have to constantly do this throttling and flying at lower altitudes.
Right, and in this case, VSS Unity kind of really doesn't have that option of, holding at a certain altitude here. It's kind of just on its way down, and it's gonna land. So far, everything looking good. We are working on getting tracking back up for the landing itself, so don't worry about that. We're doing our best to try and get that back to you as we take a look there at Spaceport America, in fact. So that is where the spacecraft is set to return. A beautiful, gorgeous day in the deserts of New Mexico. Let's see. So far, again, everything continuing well. The latest update from Virgin themselves was that the crew did get to experience their weightless time and officially welcoming to space their astronauts, Virgin astronauts 020, 021, and 022. And we have confirmation that the plane has now landed safely. The VSS Unity is back on Earth, along with its crew members, safely. Another
There we
mission in the books, Galactic 05, welcome home.
Excellent mission. Looked pretty textbook from what we could tell.
Yeah, we are slowly getting images in from Virgin Galactic of the flight portion itself. We'll see if maybe we can get some of those up on the screen and get some replays going for you here. We are working on getting the visual on that, so stay tuned. I promise we have more coming. We will have video of it, we'll have visuals, and we're finally getting images of the flight itself. So hang tight, folks. While we do have a second, though, I do want to just thank people who were supporting during the flight. Sinky Pickle, thank you very much. 15-month Red Team member milestone. Jim Cavett, thank you for gifting 2 separate Red Team memberships here. So thank you very much for that. And again, the time from actually taking off on the runway to landing back on the runway, approximately 1 hour, just under 1 hour, taking off at exactly 9 a.m. Mountain Time. That's 11 a.m. Eastern. That is absolutely beautiful, and we'll try and get some live views from the ground as well here.
Really just
Technology.
can't underscore enough that it's remarkable that they have been able, they being Virgin, to up their cadence. You know, they had that 1.5, 2 year stand down period where they upgraded the mothership and they upgraded Unity, and it shows. This is the 6th flight in 6 months. That's remarkable. It's the exact cadence that we wanted to see from Virgin this whole time, and I hope that they can keep it up and that this becomes a monthly thing, and that when we get the Delta class of vehicles, it can be even more rapid, and it's just fantastic. My most heartfelt congratulations to everybody, not just the new astronauts, but also everybody at Virgin whose hard work really paid off with this seriously impressive cadence.
Absolutely, yes. Congratulations to all the teams that worked as we see VSS Unity back at Spaceport America there on screen. This is a live view of it. And yes, shout out to not only the people on board, there's whole teams of researchers working behind the scenes on this particular mission. There was also, as you mentioned, the people working with Virgin Galactic, trying to get all of the technological things settled out, make sure the crew is safe and trained, and get them up and get them home. So it's always exciting here. So the crew inside there, you can see the first vehicles are now coming out to the spacecraft as we get ready to get the crew out and get them reunited with their families.
So, first part of egress operations here, if I'm remembering correctly, is to get the tow bar on the vehicle and then egress the crew out the hatch here. You notice that first vehicle, that first car that was towing was towing something. What they're going to do is, because the front of the vehicle has a skid on it, they basically got to put the tow bar on it, get the skid up off the ground, and set the thing on the tow bar so they can tow it back to the hangar, which is on the left side of your screen, far left side of the screen right now.
I can't see the feed right now, but EJ, does it have the air data boom on the front of Unity still?
Yeah, they have to remove that as well so they can get the tow bar
Exactly.
on. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
There you go. And it's almost kind of like, again, during the shuttle approach and landing tests, they had the that sort of extended nose thing that was helping to gather extra data about the flight profile and the vehicle.
So that's a pitot sensor. So what that does is basically measures the airspeed of laminar flow out in front of the nose. It's a good way to, obviously get data on the vehicle, but if I'm remembering correctly, and it's also there to be able to help configure the speedometer on the vehicle too, so you can get a good kind of gauge of how fast you're actually going. It needs to pick up on clean airflow, right? You don't want to put a pitot sensor behind a wing, or you don't want to put a pitot sensor on the side of the fuselage, because it's going to get turbulent air and your reading is going to be off. That's why on Enterprise it had that huge pole sticking out of the front. So because they want to get it out in front of the vehicle to get a good reading on the airspeed.
Yeah, and it's a common thing for vehicles to have that in their initial shakedown periods. And this isn't confirmed from Virgin, but I do believe at some point that air data boom will go bye-bye once they have everything sort of dialed in and they have all the data that they want. But for these early flights, that is a important component to, like you said, EJ, make sure they're getting correct data and calibrate everything, because the vehicle itself does have its own pitos. It's just for these initial flights, you want to make sure everything is working as expected, and for that, the air data boom is perfect.
And for those who don't know, what is a pitot tube?
It's it's basically an intake that measures the incoming airspeed for your airspeed indicator. It basically measures how fast the air is going into the tube.
And again, there should be a point where that boom is basically useless, as it is not in air, right on the edge of space there. So
yeah,
it's great data for going up and coming back.
Well, you were saying on the flight trackers, Sawyer, that if the baro indicator is reading 0, there's no pressure, right? Because they use pressure to correlate that speed, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah. The only pressure is the
basically-
pressure to complete the research on board. Sorry, go ahead, Trevor.
No, it's basically what a pitot tube does is it sums the dynamic and static pressures. And when you know how much pressure there is at the front of the vehicle, you can make an assumption about density of the atmosphere to back out rough airspeed. But what really matters is how much mass is going over the wings, because that's what generates your lift. So this is why airspeed is used over ground speed, because you care about, to stay flying, you need air going over your wings at a certain speed. You don't care how quickly you're moving relative to the ground.
There you go. And we have some images that just came in really quick from Virgin Galactic of the flight. This was shortly after the drop. You can see there that engine, and then look at the Earth below as it made its way to the edge of space here. And then there is the crew on board performing their experiments. You see Dr. Stern, it looks like, looking out the window. You've got Kelly doing her experiments with fluids there. It's really cool to see them actually mid-experiment with all of this too. And then the private Italian-French astronaut there in the bottom left. That is such a cool view. People I know were in space at that point, and then the view as the vehicle returned its way to the runway at Spaceport America, and then on the right side of your screen is the live view of it landed. Oh,
Note that cut nozzle. If you notice, that nozzle is asymmetric. It's the top side of that nozzle is open, right? And it seems like the end of the nozzle extends out a little bit further than on the top. That once again is there to get you a positive pitch moment during ignition. It basically wants moves the nose of the vehicle up because gas is allowed to escape out the top of the nozzle before it's allowed to escape out the bottom.
which, when you want to go up, is very important.
That's right.
There we go. That is the crew. It was so. Oh gosh, I'm sorry if I'm a little speechless here. As I was mentioning earlier, I know two of the people on board, and it hits different. Not like a late night Starlink hits different. Just you. Let me try and put this into words. I mean, I've only known Kelly for a couple of months, but she has been doing some amazing research, working hard, starting, as a woman in STEM, not easy, as she's discussed, and to, dream to become an astronaut. Most people say, yeah, that won't happen, and now she did it. To see that photo of her flying in that microgravity spaceflight environment is just exciting. And then Dr. Stern, who's already done some really cool things on his own. I mean, with New Horizons, with all of the other suborbital research that he's worked on too, his connection with the Challenger Centers, of which I was very closely associated. And again, to see him doing that experiment that we just talked about a couple of weeks ago on NSF Live, it makes me excited and happy for them. And that sort of burst of joy knowing that you have friends now that just became suborbital research astronauts here. I'm excited. Sorry about that.
Oh,
And fresh
hey.
science, fresh piping hot science right off the instruments. Science good.
Science very good, yes. This is one of the first dedicated private research flights here of the commercial era now. So this is, I'm sure, just the beginning of many more to come. But yeah, again, the idea of private researchers saying, hey, let's get our experiment into a spaceflight environment and see how they do, and just go, all right, cool, hop on board. And here you go. You have someone who's been a lifelong researcher, Southwest Research Institute, NASA, and then you have a mom who is also an author and in the technology sector there, and now also doing the research. I love the contrast of the two, and yet both of them are bona fide researchers and now bona fide suborbital astronauts. We got some support coming in here that I do want to acknowledge. Philip, thank you for the support, saying thank you guys for this fabulous coverage. Well, thank you for watching. Steve, thank you for gifting a Red Team membership. And then Mitsuo level, 22-month Capcom member milestones. Like, wow, almost 2 years of supporting such a great group of people bringing space content. Well, thank you for being such an awesome audience and supporting this as well. My goodness, I'm sorry, I'm just still kind of at a loss for words. Someone want to take over?
No, Sawyer, actually, what I was going to say is, sometimes you let the picture speak for itself. It's why when the spacecraft dropped from the mothership, we were all just sitting here going, sometimes you just let the picture on the screen do the talking for you. It's not a bad thing.
There you go. It is really cool. And again, they're working on getting the vehicle all hooked up and getting the crew out on those, I believe those are, what are those, Land Rovers, Range Rovers, to take care of the vehicle out there. EJ, you're also a car guy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we got some, it looks like Land Rovers and Range Rovers there. We got some discos out there, too. The new Land Rover, what are they, Discovery? Or the Defenders, that's what they are. They aren't discos. But
Land Rover gang.
This video not sponsored by Land Rover.
I do believe they're using Land Rovers and Range Rovers because, Virgin Galactic, Richard Branson's British, so you want British quote unquote vehicles, right?
I appreciate how that's the quote unquote in this is vehicles. As
I don't know what
it's
you're talking about.
yeah, you call quote unquote vehicles as they're all surrounding a space plane. Just saying.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I'll tell you, when the shuttle would come back down, like you'd see the service vehicles, Sawyer, and I geeked out about those too. I mean, they were old Ford trucks with they were old Ford stair trucks. They're like get at the tail service mast umbilicals, the umbilical carrier plates on the shuttle. They had old Ford trucks to do it. Even up to the end of the space program, they were using trucks from like the 70s. To drain like the hydrazine systems. Now you don't see that with this spacecraft here, but
By the way, we do have landing video there from Virgin, sort of. It's kind of visible there at the top of the screen. There we go. That is the landing of. You can see the chase plane as it flew overhead, and there is VSS Unity as it came back with its crew of 6, landing safely back at Spaceport America at the conclusion of the Galactic 05 mission. And it looks like they're towing it now.
Sawyer, that's why they use Land Rovers, because it just landed.
Oh!
no.
I award you a pun token.
Stop this.
They should use Cybertrucks instead. It'd be so cool to get out of it.
I'm sure
go
that will
into
happen
Cybertruck.
for Starship, but
yeah.
So
yeah, I don't.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I don't know if Sir Richard Branson would be on board with that. And you can see those vehicles. Looks like following behind as it goes right behind the hangar from where our camera is currently located. My understanding is they will bring it around to where a lot of the people are waiting so that the crew can come out and reunite and hug their families and friends that came out to see them and talk about their amazing experience and hopefully shake hands with Jack, even as Dr. Alan Stern said he wanted to do on NSF Live was shake the hands of someone from NSF as he got off of the space plane there. Legitimate quote. Not making that up. Go back and watch NSF Live with Alan Stern if you're not sure. Now, I do want to say it is going to be turning around, so I promise we're going to do our best to get it back into view here. We're hoping to get it as they turn it around and tow it up to the people on camera right now. So, Trevor, this is, about a 1-month turnaround in between these missions again?
Yeah, I believe 27 days. Yeah, according to Next Spaceflight, part of NSF now, 27 days, which is quite remarkable, like Jack was saying, that they had, a somewhat rough first flight, had a very long grounding after that, where they worked through a bunch of the issues that they had, and they've come back swinging hard. I think 6 launches in 6 months is a very good pace to be at.
That's impressive in itself. It's like I was saying earlier in the cast. Sawyer was commenting on, where we went for, like, this vehicle has shuttle experiments on it, experiments that flew on the shuttle 20 years ago, right? Thinking about then, the flight rate then, people going into space. There's the vehicle. There it is. Nice.
Yep, towing back.
Right? You're thinking about then and now. 6 flights for even suborbital in 6 months it's no small feat. That's really, really impressive.
Yeah.
It is. And I do want to point out that this is the last flight that we will see for a couple of months here, as the vehicle is scheduled to undergo regularly planned maintenance. And that means the next flight, Galactic 06, they're aiming for no earlier than January of 2024. So 6 and 6 months is great. And again, now they get to inspect the vehicle. As we mentioned, these are the very early flights. So see how the vehicle is faring after those 6 flights, what parts would need replacing, what parts might need upgrading, things like that.
Yeah, that's. I mean, and it's not just making sure the vehicle is okay, right? You want to make sure that the vehicle is still in the same state it was when you launched it. You know, this is aircraft maintenance 101. If you send it up there and something wasn't supposed to break and it comes back down and it's broken, well, that's some data that you have to figure out. Not saying that anything is broken here, but those checks are super important for reliability to know and understand that you can send it up there and it comes back in a similar state, obviously with the motor expended.
I do
Right?
want to point out that this was only an hour and 17 minutes ago, an hour and 18 minutes ago, that the video on the left was taken by Jack of VSS Unity and VSS Eve made it together, taking off from Spaceport America. And we just saw it land and now being towed off of that same runway on the right side of your screen live. This was the takeoff at 9 a.m. Mountain Time, pretty much on the dot. And huge shout out Jack for this video out in the field. And a beautiful takeoff that was, too, on the start of the Galactic 05 mission.
I mean, it really is an impressive vehicle. Considering, I mean, that has some off-the-shelf engines, right? The Pratt & Whitney 308s that we were talking about, but the mothership is a completely custom design. Same with the spacecraft. It's pretty impressive. I mean, even making an experimental aircraft, right? That's impressive. Let alone one that goes up, 50 plus miles up at just the edge of space. That's really impressive for what it does. It's pretty cool, man.
It's one of those things that you would expect to see in those 1950s and 60s sci-fis of, people going to an airport kind of to fly to space.
Yep.
And in this case now, mounting a plane underneath a plane, so you got planeception to go to space.
Yep. You can see the Land Rover there's they have it's a custom tow bar on that thing to get the front gear off the ground because the front gear is a skid. It's actually not a tire. So they have to remove the front pitot sensor, the airspeed sensor, to get that custom tow bar in there. If you look at the nose, it's missing a piece.
And I think that isn't the only planned space plane with the skid idea. That was also true for the plan, Trevor, for a certain other space plane, Dream Chaser, right?
Yeah, that is correct. So this week, Dream Chaser and Sierra Space hosted me at their Louisville campus as they prepare to ship Tenacity to NASA Armstrong for final testing ahead of flight, hopefully early next year on Vulcan Flight 2. And on that spacecraft as well, it has 2 rear tires, and then the front is a skid. And I assume it's for similar reasons, and that's just kind of simpler from a logistics point of view, where it's less heat shielding that you have to. Well, I guess that doesn't apply on here, but less heat shielding that you have to have. You don't have to worry about another tire deflating, and it's not that big of an inconvenience for towing, as as you can see here. Just remove the skid from touching the ground, and you're all good. So yeah, like we were saying earlier, it's the age of space planes again, and I am all here for it.
Absolutely. I mean, Trevor, the other thing is that you can't fit a tire. Like on Dream Chaser, there's the pressure vessel where all the cargo is. It's right next to the front landing gear. You can't fit a tire in there. Like physically, that will not fit. Ain't gonna fit.
As they come off runway 28, it looks like they landed on. Just imagine a flight attendant. We'd like to welcome you to the planet Earth. The current local time is 10:21. Please remain seated until the vehicles come to a complete stop and leave those tray tables upright and locked.
The timeline I want to live in, man.
And that is going to taxi on back here. Again, crew's still on board at this point, correct?
Still on board.
Mm-hmm. It actually, if you look at the roof rack on the towing vehicle, there's the front sensor. All right, put it on the roof rack. Why not?
I mean, you've got the vehicle for it. Might as well, right? We shall see. It almost looks like the hatch is open there, too.
Yeah.
believe the crew may be out of the vehicle at this point. So
You
Oh,
know,
yeah,
with it going
maybe.
behind the hangar, it's hard to say, hard to tell. You know,
Or drone up.
oh yeah, there's a drone.
and you see the big giant opening now, which was not open
Yeah,
during
yeah.
flight.
Yeah, you probably don't want to have that open.
It doesn't. I don't see anyone. Actually, yep, there
Hard to
they
say.
are.
Oh,
They're
they're
still
waving,
on
yeah.
board.
Oh, yep. Well, that answers that.
Yeah.
See them waving through the window there, giving a thumbs up. Look at that.
It's impressive, dude. Very impressive.
And now they will disembark and finally get to reunite with their families. And let's see. Up, they're bringing.
Is this
It
just
looks
like a
almost
step
like a
stool?
toolbox. Yeah.
It's a very, very, very mechanically complicated step stool.
I love
yeah.
this. On one of the world's most advanced aircraft that goes to space, how do you get out? Oh, just this plastic box.
Yep. It's very,
look-
very calibrated.
Very similar to the recycling bin that I use here.
First
But
one
yeah.
is out.
And there's Kelly,
There
it
we
looks
go.
like. Kelly Girardi, astronaut 021 with Virgin.
What a ride. That looks like so much fun.
It really does. And there's Dr. Alan Stern with the fist pump and the wave there, astronaut 020.
22 Taylor's version? Question mark.
Oh no.
No.
Well,
Don't do that
next
again.
up will be there is astronaut 022, still unnamed at this point. And I believe the last one off from the back of the vehicle, at least, will be astronaut instructor Colin Bennett. And there he is, hugging the crew on the ground there. Again, the ground crew and the flight crew working very closely. In fact, all the astronaut trainers fly aboard VSS Unity as part of their final training as well.
Talk
What a
about a dream
job.
job, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Sounds like fun.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
sorry, I'll
not
be
a
home
bad
late
job.
for dinner today. I have to go to space.
And there you go. You can see the people out there on the runway with them all hugging, reuniting, getting to say hi there. That is. Oh, the excitement. You can feel the excitement just through the hugs, as weird as that sounds. If that makes any sense.
You're hype on this, man. I'm into it. That's I'm all about it. That's excellent.
And I should point out that Virgin has now announced the name of that third crew member, astronaut 022, is Ketty Maison Rouge. That is Virgin astronaut 022.
Cool.
Love seeing all the excitement out there. And I think it's time for a quick replay here of that drop as they began their space flight, or their flight to the edge of space just a short time ago, within the last hour. You can see that was VSS Unity as it separated away from VMS Eve, the mothership, that carried it up to about 46,000 feet prior to that release.
Yep.
And that hybrid solid rocket motor igniting and firing and bringing them to an altitude approximately at about 80,000-ish feet, right? Or no, not 80,000 feet.
About 50,
80-ish miles, right?
kilometers. 80
Kilometers.
kilometers up there.
Kilometers.
We're going about
55
55 miles up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. Yes.
Gotcha, man.
Units are annoying.
I mean, how many bowling alleys is that up there?
It's a
asking
lot of
for a friend?
bananas.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Standard
I prefer
banana.
it in bald eagle average length
Yeah,
to
Trevor,
go
I knew
really
I liked you.
patriotic.
For those who haven't seen the latest SNL skit of George Washington coming up with the measurements, it's quite entertaining. Gotta watch that again. Look at that. There was the drop.
Fantastic.
Yeah, again,
It
this was
almost-
tracked by Gage, Rough Rider Show. So he did seriously an amazing job. Good work, Gage.
I believe that's slow motion of that too.
Yeah. Wow.
And if that's not slow motion, it looks like it. It's because that thing gets some speed up, I'll tell you.
I mean, Trevor, they said that they said up to Mach 3, right? I mean, obviously because of pressure fall off, because that whole space thing. What do you think? If we could put an airspeed on it, I mean, Mach 3 is what, like, I don't know, like 900 meters a second, something like that, somewhere in there.
Well, that's what I really don't know, and this is why I truly
Right.
don't like the Mach system, because the way that Mach numbers work is, right, as it's a function of both your speed and the temperature, basically, of the medium. So as the density goes down, your Mach number actually goes up, because of how the equation is. So it's really confusing sometimes to know, are people taking into account the change in pressure, or are they just talking about this would be at sea level, Mach 1 is what, 250 meters per second or whatever, and we're traveling at 1,000, so therefore we're at Mach 4? Or are they actually taking into account the change in pressure? And that's why I really dislike it as a unit of measurement. It has its place for sure, but I just have a personal issue with it.
Okay, all right. So I'm gonna build off that. What velocity indicator would you use if it was up to you?
I would give it with reference to the ground in
Yeah.
meters per second or something like that, because then we
Very
actually
nice.
have an idea of how quickly is it actually moving.
Yep.
It appears at this point Eve is also just about to come in for either a landing or a touch and go right nearby the field there, as the crew again reunites with family and friends who came out to watch them at Spaceport America in New Mexico.
Right, as they were coming out of the spacecraft and being cheered on by the crowd, which is an amazing sensation to just keep that excitement. Eve was actually ahead, circling to come in. So it was quite a nice little moment there, as the mothership is overhead, and yep, that looks like a simulated landing approach. They do this a lot. Basically, every time we've seen them fly, they will come in with the mothership well after the spacecraft has landed, and do these simulated landing approaches just to get more practice. Because this thing is basically a glider. I mean, it's got 4 engines, but as you guys were talking about earlier, they're not super huge engines. But the thing is it's a very lightweight aircraft, and it's, again, basically a glider. So I get like U2 vibes from it. It's probably not the easiest aircraft to, it wants to fly, it doesn't want to land. So they'll do these simulated landing approaches, and that was just an amazing pass by Eve, straight over the crowd at a slight bank angle. Just an absolute beautiful scene. I mean, you guys were saying it far better than I could right now, because I'm sleep deprived and just racked with adrenaline from all this. But truly, just a really beautiful vehicle, both the mothership and the spacecraft. And just, there's a certain amount of, dare I say, pomp and circumstance to these flights. I mean, as there should be. People are going into space, even if it's suborbital space. And I'm here for it. I'm 100% here for it, because we should celebrate these achievements, every single one of them, even when it's a monthly thing, even when, if they get to a bi-weekly thing or whatever cadence they eventually reach. This sort of thing should be celebrated. And I'm happy to see people come out and be excited for it. And if you're watching the stream, thank you for watching our stream and sharing this awesome time with us, and the support and members. Oh my God,
Yeah.
we could not do this without everybody's support. So just, holy cow, thank you so much. It is, once again, not trivial to get myself and my backpack, my big carry-on full of gear, and then 2 tripods, and then a giant 50-pound Pelican case, like, full of a robot. It's absolutely not trivial to get this done, and we could not do this without the support of everybody watching. Even if it just means you're hitting the like button and telling your friends about us, like, it doesn't have to be a monetary thing. Just thank you all so much, because again, this is the sort of thing that should be celebrated. And the fact that people turn up and watch launches like this and celebrate along with us, and celebrate along with the crew members, and celebrate along with the family members and the crowd, it just don't get much better.
I mean, everybody here has given us their time. You know, you guys showed up to watch, and that's you're giving us your time, and that's the most flattering thing that we could ever want. So we do appreciate it, everybody over here.
Thank you. On the left, by the way, is the track of VMS Eve. I do want to say, Jack, you were talking about, even if it's one a month, the kind of excitement of it. Just a reminder, this year marks 120 years since the first ever flight. The Wright brothers flew in December of 1903 for a total of 12 seconds and a distance of 180 feet. We just saw a plane fly into space, to the edge of space here, and then land back on a runway with another plane mounted underneath another airplane. The time has come. So I want to hit our final support here. Jim Cavett, thank you very much for the support. More science, more better. 1776, thank you for becoming a Capcom member. Carson Reed, 32 months as a PadRat member. Very much appreciated there. And Jim Cavett with a little bit for the Jack Travel Fund with some support there. Thank you. And speaking of Jack, thank you very much for rolling out there as we take another look at the flight again here on the left. Jack, thank you for rolling out and doing this today.
Absolutely. I am a very fortunate and lucky person that I get to do such cool things, and not only that, but share it with people around the world. It is truly the future, and I am just honored and humbled that I get to do this. So once again, thank you all for the support. And that looks like a landing for Eve. Let's see if it sticks to the ground. I think it is. I think that's going to be down. So once again, thank you to everybody. Thank you to everybody here on stream for holding things down while I run around and do camera stuff. So, nope. It's, yep, it's going up again. Good deal. All right, I'll shut up. Thank you, everybody.
No, it's all good. Thank you. And EJ, thank you. Oh, there it goes. EJ, thank you for...
All right.
Look at that. Look. Oh, still
See,
cool.
Remember that whole commentary thing where you don't need it? Look at that. That's pretty cool. All right. Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for having me, Sawyer. I appreciate it. We're going to pack up shop here.
Always nice to have you, EJ. And don't forget, he is on Twitch. What's your Twitch channel?
EJ_SA.
And he is one of the most knowledgeable shuttle people that I know, along with Crispy and Chris G. Very entertaining, very funny. You do stuff with cars, you do stuff with engineering, and explain it all really, really well. So
I'm trying.
I can let it go that you're a fan of Boston sports for all the other information and education you provide. So go check EJ out if you don't already. And of course, our very own Trevor Sesnick here. Thank you so much for joining as well.
No, thanks for having us. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Yes, and behind the scenes, the first part of the stream, Patrick was the one operating. Currently here at the end, Ryan is helping to finish up here. And as they put the rope around VSS Unity, we will tie a bow on this stream. I am Sawyer Rosenstein. I have been your host for this. Thank you, everyone, for watching this NSF stream. Thank you for all the comments, the likes, everything like that. We appreciate it. And two of my friends just came back from the edge of space. On that note, thanks for watching, everybody. Until next time.
And here we go. We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be normal.
RCPA chamber pressure looks good.
Traveling up. Roger, planet.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Tango Delta nominal.
Fighting downside SPD off. Bring in SPD off. Off.
It's orange!
R25! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage!
Look at this!
Put that in the big bag, Eagle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
This methane will be igniting with the flare, correct?
Yikes. You dead? Sure. We don't need any more of these.